Welcome back to this series of conversations at the Dark Reading News Desk at RSA. It's Terry Sweeney with Dark Reading, and joining me now is Jack Naglieri, founder and CEO of Panther Labs. Jack, thanks for joining us at the news desk today.
Thanks for having me, Terry.
We are talking about mitigating the security skills shortage in cybersecurity, a big and challenging topic. One of the drivers of this is, of course, the explosion of data that cybersecurity professionals have to deal with on a daily, hourly, minutely basis. How is this changing, especially with something like the cloud? How is this changing how security teams need to operate?
It's changing quite a lot. I don't think it's particularly a surprise to anybody that it's hard. But the thing that I've learned in the last 10 years in being in cyber, specifically in incident response, detection, things like that, is that we have to evolve the way that we receive data, like the platforms that we use, and then the procedures of how we interact with the data. And things are becoming much more centered around big data technologies, which is just a fancy way of saying big data warehousing. And then on the other side of that is the developer-oriented principles that we're seeing now applied to security. So this is things like using software to analyze data and respond to data in ways that allow us to just focus on the things that are highest importance and urgency.
The huge data volumes also seem to have presented a very timely and attractive hook for those who are marketing artificial intelligence. Would you agree with that?
Sure. I mean, there's been AI marketed into security since I've been a practitioner. So my personal opinion is that it's not a silver bullet for the problems that we're facing in security, and that a lot of the primitive issues really just come from the fact that there aren't architectures that are designed to run at the scale that we need to run at. So this is way before we get into AI ML. So of course there's always an opportunity for it though.
Burnout, of course, is a huge challenge for security practitioners, not to mention just the escalating demands on security teams that have only seemingly gotten worse during these pandemic times. What are your thoughts about how security leaders can improve the situation for their teams? What are some steps they might take?
There's a lot of things. I mean, one thing you're probably not going to expect for me to say is psychological safety. There's a lot of teams out there under immense pressure to protect banks and just very sensitive data that might belong to you and I, right?
Sure.
So there's a lot of risk involved in their job, and they feel an immense pressure probably from the entire organization. So being a leader that focuses on empathy and psychological safety and allowing the team to take risks, make reasonable mistakes, not all mistakes all the time. In security, we have to have a high standard just because of the seriousness of the job that we do. So there's one element of just like person to person that is really meaningful. And then there's the whole other element of, is the team prepared with the right tools and data? And that's like a baseline for us to start. So those are two things that come to my mind with this question.
Sure. So we started by talking about the security skills gap. There's a parallel dynamic of just the challenge in hiring good, qualified security professionals. What advice do you have for those teams who are trying to hire and train staff? What might make these processes easier?
So it's actually an interesting segue from the last question, right? Because we're talking about burnout. So going more into how do you build a good, healthy team? Again, having the empathy and the right tooling in place as a baseline. And then the next step of that is training your team. In security today, we're really struggling with skills shortage just because the intersection of all the things security people have to know is quite large now. We started maybe 10 years ago just focusing on a single machine, understanding, okay, this is compromised for this reason,
right.
But now in the age of the cloud, the threat model is completely different. So now there should be structured onboarding and training for security teams on, hey, this is what the cloud is, this is how SaaS applications are set up everywhere, and also here's some basic Python scripting or things similar to that allow people to start to automate their work.
I can hear the voice of experience in your replies here, and that's all to the good and not entirely unexpected. Since you started your career as a security practitioner, what in that background inspired you to found your own security company?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to quit a job that's perfectly well paying at a great company like Airbnb and go off into the ether to do my own thing. But I think what it came down to was I had figured out a way to solve this problem in one iteration, and I felt that I would have been redoing that over and over and over again inside of companies. A lot of the big SIM products had just failed us for many years. They're too slow, they're too expensive, they're difficult to use, they weren't built for the age of the cloud. And Airbnb was a really unique experience because they were the first company I worked for fully built in the cloud. They were a huge Amazon shop. And for me, coming from Yahoo, which was fundamentally very different, there was quite a lot that I had to learn. And luckily, we had the opportunity to build. And typically, it's not a great idea in security, to be honest, to build your own tools unless it's like absolutely required or very unique to your position. But we just felt that to operate at the scale we wanted to with the team that we had, which was me and my manager, we needed to build something. So after living that problem for many years, finding this like silver lining and like, okay, we actually can do this. And we open sourced it. We built a project called Stream Alert. It was based on AWS Lambda and a lot of other serverless tech. And it was sort of the beginning of what led into my company, Panther. So after sort of seeing these successes and after seeing the open source project get adopted, I just saw an opportunity to continue to work on it and decided to kind of just take the leap and jump right in. So it was super scary, but just extremely rewarding as a founder now. Yeah.
You've mentioned psychological safety, and you've referenced what I'll call humanity skills, which I'm curious what the reception has been, and what a greater focus around mental health issues sort of generally in our culture during the pandemic. My guess is that's getting a sweeter reception than it might have, say, 2.5 years ago. What's been your experience there?
As a leader, or just in general?
As a leader, as the head of a company, as all those things.
It's required, I feel like. One of our core values is take care of the team. And part of that is just doing the right thing for the better of the person. So it's understanding what that person is going through when they step out of Zoom and kind of just getting a little bit more into the inner workings of how people are truly doing. So connecting at that level, I think, is very valuable for leaders, and recognizing that there's more to someone than their work persona. So when we apply these concepts also to our customers, we just see immense positive feedback. I mean, we've heard time and time again, I would have never expected a vendor to have this level of care with us. Like, we really appreciate it. Like, someone told me that to my face last night, actually, at a dinner out here at RSA. But that value of empathy, I think, is so key, especially in a time, coming out of the pandemic, or the worst parts of the pandemic, where we were struggling with not only the difficulty of our jobs, but also the uncertainty of like the world around us. So that's a value that I think goes very hand in hand also with remote work, just having flexibility, because people need flexibility and it helps them have more ease when they're going about their day to day. So
it's a good skill to have in these troubled times, for sure. What advice would you have for other security practitioners considering founding their own companies?
I mean, I'm biased. I would just say do it.
Yeah.
I think, of course, there's parameters to it. I think that if you understand the problem really, really well, there's a market for it, and you maybe have someone else that you can do it with, I would say go for it. We're in this golden age of security startups, and if you look on, I think Crunchbase has a really cool diagram that shows all of the funding of security startups over the last 10 years, and it's just up and to the right. And it's similar to what we were talking about in the beginning of things moving to cloud, remote work. These are all related concepts where it's just become much more complex to do security as time's gone on. So if you have a good idea, you should do it. It's super scary. It's very uncertain. You don't know if you're going to survive, a year. I had those thoughts as well. I was actually super certain I wouldn't make it through the first year, and then it didn't happen. We got funding and we kept going, but having someone to do it with is something I'd recommend. I didn't do that. I'm a sole founder, which is and was very hard in the beginning. But yeah, have courage, know the problem you're solving, and go for it. And contact me and I'll help you through the journey.
Great stuff, Jack. Thanks for the insights on the skills gap, hiring, being a more human manager, and being brave enough to found your own company. Bravo.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Terry.
We've been talking with Jack Naglieri of Panther Labs. This has been Terry Sweeney for the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us for this conversation. We'll see you next time.